it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to have people that care so much about this program, and that's obviously a lot. We're talking about our team, our coaching staff, but as you talk about the fan base and just everyone who's poured into this place, comes and supports us, not just on Saturdays, but all year round, just follows the program. There's a lot that's happened in this program before I got here that I get to reap the rewards of, and just want to continue to build on it and continue to make it better for those that follow.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. The off season is rolling. I'm your host, Yogi Roth, as always, joined by Jim Thornby. And today we got a very special guest. Now, just to reset, because I have a feeling, Jim, we're going to have some new viewers in today's episode that reside down in the South. We've always said, and I think we've been this, college football through the lens of the West Coast. Through the lens of the West Coast. So that means sometimes we leave the West Coast, like not just for Big Ten games, but actually this time we took a road trip to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So that's right. Today's conversation, presented by our founding partner 76, is none other than Alabama's head coach, Kalen DeBoer. I had a chance to spend some time with him. His staff spoke to the team, did some media training, some brand building. And of course, you know, we had to shoot a podcast episode as well. Big shout out to Walt Brock and that team over at Alabama for helping us out. Can't wait to get to that conversation. But before we do, Jim, we got some news. We got to dive into some topics here in the offseason in major college football.
Yeah, well, I mean, with Kalen being the guest here, I had to get a little nostalgic here. I got my old Pac-12 sweatshirt here, and this is the CFP hat I think that I got for volunteering at that CFP, at that championship game, his last game at Washington there. So trying to bring all the memories in here together on that. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, what was your big takeaway from the trip to Alabama?
Well, it's a long ways away. So that I had a blast, man. I had so many takeaways. It was kind of one of those nostalgic trips. You can check it out. We did a little from the road on mine and Y Options Instagram account. We put it on our YouTube page as well. It was fun because I flew to Atlanta. Flight got canceled to Birmingham. So then I did the 3-hour drive. And it was awesome, man. Like, I went through Talladega. I didn't even know Talladega was in Alabama. So that was awesome to check that out. And then I went to campus, and I pulled in right to the stadium. My GPS went right to their stadium. I wanted to see it. And pulling in to that community, I hadn't been there probably 15 years. I was there for Elite 11 15 years ago in the summer when at the time, like, staffs weren't even allowed to be on campus. So you couldn't see anything. You just went to the practice field and had a camp. I rolled in, Jim, and it was awesome. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I saw those big buildings, like the history, the campus, the whole thing. And I was sucked into the nostalgia, like from the very beginning. Then went to dinner with Coach DeBoer and Courtney Morgan, their GM, who's just been a friend forever when he was at UCLA, and went around Jim Mora, just getting going in his career now. It was kind of the face of what GMs have become in college football. Shout out to Jim Nagy, just hired at Oklahoma as their GM as well. And it was fun just to catch up on life. And then the next morning, had a chance to talk to the team, got to meet a bunch of guys on the staff, like reunited with Ryan Grubb or Nick Sheridan. There's a bunch of guys that are there that we knew from their time at Washington. And then talk to the team. And talking to the team was really cool. I get to do this a handful of times every offseason. And it's really fun and an honor for me to be entrusted to be in one of the sacred places, which is a team room. And you think of the Alabama team room. Like, I walked in there, and I'm not going to lie, and I'm like, I remember when Kobe was in this team room. I remember when Stephen A. Smith was in this team room. Like, think of all the speakers that Nick Saban has brought on in the past. And for Kalen DeBoer and that Alabama staff to bring me in, I was just really grateful for it. And then you know me well enough. Like, I went for it. Like, we went for it hard. Like, it was allotted for like 20, 30 minutes. I think we went for like an hour and 20, 30 minutes. It was all on media training, brand building, and then afterwards got to hang out with some of their players that just wanted more work. And Ryan Williams was one of those guys. I know Alabama fans are so impressed with him as a player. I'm even more impressed with him as a young man, how he thinks about his career and his life and his brand and his story and his voice. Spent a bunch of time with players afterwards, and then shot the podcast with Coach DeBoer. So takeaways, it means a lot down there. I can feel that. Takeaway number 2, I miss seeing Kalen DeBoer and company. I kick off the podcast conversation. I think my first question was, the last time I saw him was after they lose to Michigan. And I see it like it was yesterday. He comes out of the locker room after talking to the team, like every coach is when the season ends, glassy-eyed, gives his family a big hug, went and did the media, and then was gracious enough to spend time with us. You were there producing it. It was the last thing I ever did. That's not true. It was one of the last things I ever did for the Pac-12 network. And he did a candid, thoughtful interview that was everything that Kalen DeBoer is, which is real, and honest and kind and competitive. And that's the last time I saw him, though. Because then days later, it was to Alabama, and then we've talked about it, it's Brent Brennan and Jed Fish, and all of a sudden, like the dominoes that fall and all the people that he impacted. And then he's into that crazy, celebration of him going there. I mean, remember, 3,000 people showed up at the airport at like 2 a.m. to welcome him and Courtney Morgan and their families. So it was great. I think I walked out of there just feeling like really grateful to cultivate relationships with coaches, and then being invited to talk to a variety of locker rooms. And that's the first time I've been down to do media training in the SEC, and to go to a place like Alabama, which has been the program in that league for so long. It was really cool.
Well, it's funny because, like, to your point, like, not only did he do the interview with them, but then, like, he went back to collect his stuff, and then we were like getting all our stuff together. We literally walked out of the stadium. We just kind of ran back into him in the hallway. Literally walked out of the stadium with him there. But it's cool, like, after 1 year there now for year 2, reunited with Ryan Grubb. I know you talked to him about that in the interview, but I think one of the things everybody's going to be intrigued about this Alabama team this year is the quarterback situation. Jalen Milroe's been the guy for the last couple of years. You've got Ty Simpson, who I know you're familiar with from your Elite 11 days. You got Austin Mack, who we are familiar with from his UW days. I remember seeing him in person at the Sugar Bowl and being like, wow, this dude is enormous. And like really just kind of impressed by him. And then Keelan Russell's coming in, and we saw him last year at the Elite 11. And he was the one that kind of, his progression up to that Elite 11 was kind of like an explosion. I'm spacing now where he had been committed to previous. It was SMU, right? Because he is a Dallas guy. And, but you could tell, like, all of a sudden there was a lot more, even just as that week started, a lot more interest in him. And as that week concluded, you're like, oh yeah, that's a dude.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of thoughts on that. One, I want to finish up one other thing on Kalen DeBoer, because I think Alabama fans will really enjoy hearing this. So a couple of years ago, I think it was before maybe his final season at Washington, I went up there and did a version of this conversation with the team. And afterwards, we go to lunch, we walk around campus, but really, like, he took me through the facility, took me to his favorite places overlooking the stadium. He just had such a pride in that. I share that story because the same exact thing happened in Tuscaloosa. I've been around a lot of head coaches, and they're busy. They're CEOs of multi-million dollar organizations, especially in this era, and especially a place like Alabama. Kalen DeBoer has not changed one iota in terms of the human and the man that he is. Not only did he pick me up at the hotel to take me out for a bite to eat, but he also guided me around the facility, took me through different rooms. This is what we do here. Hey, check out, this is where we study here. Hey, this is how we try this thing here. Check out our weight room, our training room. Just so kind. And then he drove me over to the stadium. It's not like it was attached to the football facility like it is in Washington, where you just kind of take an elevator and you're 100 feet away, and now you're at a lookout at Husky Stadium. I mean, you got to drive over there. Takes me over to this beautiful, I mean, it is just in the South, like it's a Mecca, right? Like, and you go there, and for us to kind of navigate, my first time ever being in that illustrious and historic stadium. And he took me through everything, like where he does his media afterwards, what his process is like. It was really cool. Like, honestly, it's just who he is. And I think whether you go back to his days as a small school coach, or whether him at Washington to a national title, or now at one of the bluest of blue blood programs in the history of college football, Kalen DeBoer hasn't changed. in that regard. And that humility and that competitive temperament is what I saw being reflected being around the team. I think in year one, it's so hard. I think it's harder now to take over successful programs than it has ever been before, just because of roster retention, that state that we're in college football. I think of what they did last year. I get it. They didn't meet the expectations that are there. And I don't think he would shy away from that either. He hasn't. And anytime he's been asked for that. But I think he's made that place a really healthy organization. I think I talked to the players. They seem so well-rounded. Guys loving to go compete for him. You look at how they're recruiting, how they're building it. I'll get to the quarterback thing here in a second. But I just want to state that for Bama fans. Like, when you hired Kalen DeBoer, you got at the time, in my eyes, one of the best coaches in America, and voted by everyone else in the world the best coach that season in all of college football. So I just say all that of like, it couldn't have been a better trip, man. It was just amazing on so many fronts. Okay, to the quarterback room. Ty Simpson, to me, leader in the clubhouse. Just been there. He could have ran many times. He could have dipped to somewhere else and go to play many times. He did not. Okay, now how does he navigate this offense with Ryan Grubb now calling plays? Austin Mack. What a phenomenal young man. I mean, he just lit me up when I saw him. He was the first guy I saw in the team room right before me giving the speech. And you're right. He is physically imposing, and he'll have his shot. And then here comes Keelan Russell. I said, hey, man, how's college going? He goes, it's good, man. Like, he's able to adjust pretty naturally. So just so impressive. And he won the MVP at the elite level last year, and he was a pretty slender dude. He rolled in there like every guy who's been on campus for a couple months. Like, he looked a little rocked up, like his body started to fill out, which always happens senior year and then heading into your first year in college. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I think even like the uniqueness of Nick Sheridan no longer being the play caller, but still being there. It's just to me, one of the most unique circumstances I've seen in coaching in my 25 years in college football. Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer have been connected forever. I mean, literally, when they were both making less than 10 grand coaching together. And then he becomes available because he's no longer in the NFL with the Seahawks. And it was almost like, of course he was going to bring him back. So I look at that, and I don't see like a demotion for Nick Sheridan. I mean, I think they were fourth in the SEC in offense. Like, it's not like they didn't put up numbers. Not like they didn't move the ball. So I think now they've got even more firepower because they don't lose Nick. They only add Ryan. These guys have worked together in the past, obviously at Washington being the prime example. So I'm looking forward to Alabama taking another step this season. I'm excited for them and their season. I know their schedule isn't simple. I know they got some tough road games, like they go to Athens, but we prepared for that. We did media training on how to handle going on the road, man. So net, I'm thrilled for them. They start spring ball, I think, a week from when this episode comes out, a little week and some change. So think about that. Ryan Grubb has been there for just a minute, and you got to install, you got to get ready. So they'll be moving fast. And I cannot wait to watch this thing shake out. Always been a fan of Kalen, now an even bigger fan of Alabama. So Tuscaloosa, you got me. I'm all in.
Yeah, and it's funny because like when you get an interview with the Alabama head coach, you don't really need a news peg to run the interview. But I appreciate the fact that Alabama helped it out a little bit this week with making some news, and it was a topic that we were already going to talk about. As Coach DeBoer said that this year they're going to have a more modified, what they call the A-Day game, which is, their spring game. And obviously this is something that we've seen now with a few schools already, at least as far as announcing. There might be more that haven't come out and actually said it yet, but of kind of going away from the traditional spring game. As we've seen it, we've seen USC, we've seen Nebraska, we've seen Texas kind of all come out and say that, yeah, that's not what we're not doing that this year. I think we might actually have differing opinions on here, but so let me get your thoughts on the spring games and where this is all headed right now.
Ready, set, dream cabin nestled in the woods. Just 4 hours to go. New job halfway across the country. Butterflies before a first date. Wherever you go, 76 fuels all the ways you go.
Yeah, it's been a fun conversation for me, kind of just doing what I do in the offseason, just talking to coaches all the time. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And the conversation does splinter, I think, depending on where the school is. And that's where my opinion comes down on this. I understand why Texas doesn't want to have a spring game. You know, they play 30 games in the last 2 seasons of college football. It's a lot, right? They finish their season January 20th. It's just hard on the body. It's so many snaps. It's such a long season. Ohio State, same deal. Like I get that. And I am a fan of the NFL model of OTAs, especially when you look at the date of the spring portal. Was it April 15th to April 25th? I think it's somewhere right in that window. I'm a fan of treating this thing like the NFL. And instead of having, I think it's 34 days per NCAA to have 15 practices, give them 3 months. Like, give them all the time, and like, let them do whatever they want. Like, why does anybody care? Like, go April, May, June. Go 2 weekends per month. Like, however you want to navigate that. I would love to see that happen. And I think that is where this thing is going. It's what I think a school like Texas is going to do. I think a school like Ohio State, they're going to have to, as Ryan Day has referenced, like, there'll be a ramp up in spring. And I think that's where we're going, Jim. Like, period, full stop. When it comes to the spring game, I am a huge fan of putting players in moments where they have to perform. Like, I love performance anxiety. I feel it every time I do a podcast, every time I broadcast a game. I think it's great for the soul. I don't like seeing that being taken away. That's one. Two, I think that in the old school vein of fans, I think it's cool for fans to come see your college team. I really do. I mean, I read an article last night about Georgia, how they're going to have a spring something because every fan can't afford season tickets. It's not something I ever really thought about. But you can afford to go to a spring game, whether it's a $5 donation or it's for free. You're coming to that spring game. I love that, to just get a glimpse of. But I think we're kind of kidding ourselves of like, what are these games? They're not games. Like, you come out of it and we all try to write or talk about our big takeaways. It's really hard to tell, right? It's like, you see, I can remember doing an SC spring game. I think it was Lincoln Riley's first year, and like, they start off under center. You know, you're like, oh, under center and I formation. Like, I'm just making that up, but it's like totally different than what they normally do. So where do I net out on all this? I think it's school dependent. I think it's brand dependent. I think some of the bigger blue bloods, on one hand, I would say, I think my first gut reaction was, if you're Ohio State, if you're Nebraska, if you're one of these big brands, like, have your game. And if guys want to leave, let them leave. But then you dive into it further, especially in this 4-month span before, like, what we presume to be revenue sharing hitting. It is a total free-for-all. So what's happening now? I'll give you an example. I'll be a backup offensive lineman. Let's just call it Ohio State. And I'm just making these numbers up, but let's just pretend I'm at Ohio State, I'm Penn State, I'm Oregon. I'm one of these big-time programs that have resources. If I'm a backup left guard, I'm just going to guess I'm going to make $150,000 this year. Well, at another school, let's just call it, maybe it's Arizona. Maybe it's Ole Miss. Maybe it's South Carolina. They need a starting left guard. And they can afford to pay $500,000 for that. So they go see that in the spring game and say, you know what, I'm going to go offer Jim Thornby that kind of money. That, to me, is where I have the empathy for the coaches of, like, I get it. You don't want it out there. But at some point, I think, like, what are we going to do? Shut off all, like, communication to a program? Like, I talked to a group of 5 secondary coach. And I said, what's your group like? He goes, it's better than the group I had at a Power 4 school the year prior. He goes, but I'm not talking about any of my guys, because if there's an article on them, then all of a sudden they're going to get poached. Like, think about the worlds that we're in. So I just think I understand it. I don't disagree with it. I don't love it for a bunch of reasons. I support it for a bunch of reasons. I think the last thing, and this is probably what tips the scale for me, why I wish there were spring games. I go back to, like, the craft that I'm in, and I think of, like, all the production people that are now losing a handful of days of work. I think I'll always just net out there. Like, I'm never a fan of, like, losing days. So I have an answer. I would just say, have a version of, I think what UCLA might do or some other schools might do. They're going to have a showcase. They're going to let fans come. They're just not going to be broadcast. They're not going to do. So you're still allow your fans to have a piece of this thing. That's what I hope every fan base eventually does. But we might be in the NFL model. Like, you don't go see the Seahawks in the spring. You don't go see the Rams in the spring. So you're not going to go see the Texas Longhorns in the spring. What does that do to that fan base? Probably nothing. But over time, what does that do if it's Arizona? What does that do if it's Stanford? What does that do if it's Cal? I do think there's remnants of, I don't really know these guys anyway. Screw it, I'm not going to a game.
Yeah, and that actually that's the part where I'm 100% at with, because I think about like to one your point, like with the amount of games that some of these teams are playing. Yeah, this is the time that like these guys are getting their off-season surgery, and like this is for them to get healthy to be able to then be ready for fall practice when they're actually, competing and stuff like that. I can remember several times during our years in the Pac-12 where like you would be almost up to the day of the event where you're like, the coach is not really sure what they're doing that day because, oh, well, we have enough healthy offensive linemen to be able to to do this. There's so many things that they're not really, putting out there, and for obvious reasons, but like of why is the format this? Why is the format that? Like they're constantly like shuffling that just to meet the personnel that they have available for that. And I forget who it was. I saw somebody had the quote it was like, it might have even been Sark, but it was talking about like half the team has too many snaps and the other half doesn't have enough.
Totally.
Like, and you're trying to figure out how do you do all this? And like you mentioned the 15 practices. I would like to see, you keep those 15 practices, and that, that is kind of untouched. But then you allow for each team to have a quote unquote like marketing day. Because to me, that's what always was what that spring game was. Like people, I remember a lot of times that we'd have different opinions, even in the Pac-12 in the office. So people like, oh, they got to play a game. They got to play a game. I'm like, who cares if they play a game? Like what I would want if I am a, team X, would I rather a broadcast that is like really showcasing my higher end players, the players that either you already know or that you want to know more about, or do you want to see the fourth and fifth stringers take, actual snaps? Like to me, that was always the biggest sell was, hey, let us do an infomercial basically for your program for 60 minutes. Let us tell your stories. Now I get it now, like with the portal, like that kind of like makes that a little bit scarier for them. But when you're a program asking fans for NIL money, they need the fans want to know who these guys are.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to give you money if I don't even know who these, with so many people coming and leaving, like it's hard to really, connect with these programs when you don't know who the guys are and you're not like actively pushing on that. Like, again, I get it. Like, because you are like that now exposing, if you're, a group of 5 school and now you're exposing this guy to, bigger schools or whatever. But at some point that's going to happen or it's not.
Yeah. What's interesting, Jim, is that I think there's 2 thoughts here. One, and I think most schools are going to do this, right? Remember, rosters are getting cut to 105. I've been heartbroken with the amount of conversations I've had with walk-ons in college football. And they call me because I'm a former walk-on, and you know me, I give my number to anybody. But it's, what do I do? Where do I go? Because the coach just told me I don't have a spot on the team, which I applaud the coach for getting ahead of it. But God, does it break my heart. So what's going to happen? A lot of coaches, Matt Rule just came out and said this. I think I'd imagine a lot of teams are going to take like an NFL model. 54, 57 active players, like those are their guys. And then there's the developmental roster. And then there's another 10 spots that maybe become like those walk-on-y type of places. Because remember, schools can do whatever they want with the money now, right? So do you partial guy, like how do you want to navigate the money you have in rev share is really the question. The other part of this is that we can't ignore, in my opinion, what's happening in college football. Like there's a separation, and not just between San Jose State and Alabama. It's to your point, like you want to get to know these players, right? You want to get to know Arizona's players. You want to get to know Cal's players. You want to get to know, like, as you hear like the howling, I have a new dog. I don't know, like literally it's like a wolf out here. Anyway, that's
He's
another story. Yeah, that's for a newsletter. But my point is that like if you don't get to know the players at Arizona at Cal, like some of these Power 4 schools that didn't just have a run that Arizona State had. Like, think about that. To me is the concern, because now, to your point, as an alum of Arizona, an alum of, let's just say, Cal, an alum of Stanford, like if you become, what's the best word, like apathetic, like that is the worst thing that could happen, because now your school is part of a league to get media dollars, to just be part of the conversation. But your fan base doesn't feel a connection to the team, but the staff doesn't want to unveil everything about the team because they want to protect the team. Like, it's a really tough balance. And that's why I say, like, it's always important in these conversations to be like super, you have to compete to be empathetic and see it through the lens of these coaches. Like, Justin Wilcox doesn't want to lose his roster. He has before. I mean, Nico Remigio left to go to Fresno, right? Like, and that wasn't even, and he, I don't know the exact reason why I left, but the point is that, like, that's the part that gets always forgotten in these conversations, is these teams that maybe aren't in the Big Ten or the SEC, that are sitting in the Big 12 or in the ACC, especially in the West Coast, and you're kind of like a random outlier. Cal and Stanford, random outliers in the ACC. Arizona State goes off last year. Utah is always going to be strong, but they were down. Like, Arizona coming off a challenging season, like, how are they going to be able to, Brennan, navigate this thing? Like, I just think overall, like, those are the schools that I worry about, of like, are your fans going to be at some point like, your conference fell apart for whatever reason, or for a variety of reasons, and now I don't get to know the team. And that's why I think a lot of the mid-tier power schools are going to have a spring something. Do they get on TV? I think that's up to TV partners. There's so much that goes into that. Like at the Big Ten, we cover the game if you have a game. But if you have practice, I don't think we're necessarily going there to cover the showcase, which the team probably likes. Fan base, maybe not. I don't know. TBD.
Yeah. And I actually really enjoyed the quote unquote showcases.
Yeah.
Like, because the coaches talked more. You learn more about the players. Like, you weren't so much worried about like, oh, okay, 3rd and 7, we're running this. Like, great. Like, let me know more about these guys. But I'm glad you brought up Stanford, because that's like the perfect segue to where we want to go next with this, with the announcement that Bernard Muir is going to be stepping down at the end of this year. So obviously you look at what Stanford on the football, obviously that affects all of athletics, but obviously we're a football show, so we're going to talk about the football part of it. They're coming off 4 straight 3-9 seasons. So the first 2 years of Troy Taylor, the last 2 years of David Shaw. They just named Andrew Luck the GM. There's a lot of other player movement. Like, where's your head at with where Stanford is right now?
I have a recommendation, but I also don't know where they're at. Right? I go back to my favorite thing I've ever learned from content coming out of Stanford was David Shaw's TED Talk. We'll link it in the newsletter for today because it's so good. Any fan base should watch it, but especially a Stanford fan base. And ultimately, he talked about the beginning of the Harbaugh era and then eventually what he took over and led to unprecedented heights. And he talked about how the modality was, let's go find 25 elite athletes who also are elite and value the classroom. That's not that hard, folks. It actually, I think it's easier than if you're recruiting at USC, if you're recruiting at Alabama, if you're recruiting at Georgia, because there's a certain demo that fits. Challenge now is that those premier players, yes, they value the degree. And I think there's a world where it's like, come play 3, get your degree, and get out and go transfer to another school if you want to go do that. Like, I think there's a sell there. But ultimately, like, Stanford isn't winning those battles with the amount of success that they had in the past. Okay, why? Well, number one, you go to the record. Number two, you go to the games there. They're not like the most electric environments. I don't know the details of their collective. I know it exists. I know it's competitive. I know that from talking to people over the last year and a half there. That's where I net out, I think, for them, of like, they have to me, in this moment in time, because I'm a big Bernard Muir fan. He's been a friend. He's been somebody that I've been able to work really closely with. I don't know the details of his resignation, if it is a true resignation where he wants to go to greener pastures in his life. It is a forced resignation. Like, I don't know any of the details around that. I haven't dug into that, and probably won't, because it doesn't matter, because I want to honor the man that he was and what he led Stanford to do, which is many things. He oversaw one of the greatest runs in the history of the world. He also had to navigate one of the greatest fallouts in the history of college sports, which is the Pac-12 and Stanford, right? Stanford win more Olympics in every Olympics than like a majority of countries. Right. So like, I think it's hard to lump like his tenure into today's reality of conference realignment. Like, they had to go find a place. They chose to not rebuild the new look Pac-12. They chose to go to the only lifeline they really had, which is the ACC, for minimal media rights money. But their athletes, they told Bernard Muir they wanted to go play and compete at that level. Okay, cool. So that's the reality. That's where we sit here today. Ultimately, though, today, Stanford has to make a choice of if they want to go all in my opinion, from the outside looking in. Like, do they want to throw down in the way that Texas is throwing down, in the way that USC has committed millions of dollars to a front office, to recruiting, to staffing? Like, that's the decision. And I hope they do, because I still think their model can work. Okay, let's spin it forward. Okay, who should they hire as the next AD? I think, again, I go back to that TED Talk. They need to go back, just like I said about USC. USC, go back to the way we recruited when I was at USC and modernize it. I think that's what SC is doing right now with Chad Savage and Lincoln Riley and company. Stanford, they need to modernize that TED Talk. So how do you do it? You do it with energy. You do it with canvassing around the country. I think you do it with staff hires. I think you have to add a little bit more muscle to where they sit. And as the AD, are they going to come in and try to compete to hang on to the old model of this is the premier academic institution, of course, this is a premier athletic institution, of course, period? Or do they say, and we're in a new landscape, how are we going to compete in that? Like, you need a thought leader. You need somebody who knows college athletics, but is a visionary. You know where I'm going with this. Like, you need, to me, sitting right there, it's Carter Henderson. I mean, this is a guy who's been at all these places. He's been at a variety of different big-time institutions, knows what drives revenue, knows what drives story, knows marketing, and has lived the experience of conference realignment. They may not be their first choice. I don't know who any of their choices are, but the answer is not to go get somebody from private equity to run your institution. And it's not to get just a lifelong, 30-year plus college administrator. Like, you have to me, put your foot down and make a pivot here and go for it. Because you can. Like, Stanford could be in the same conversations as Alabama. They once were. It wasn't that long ago when they were drilling Iowa in the Rose Bowl, when they were playing in meaningful games, where they were selling out their stadium. So we've seen it can happen there. I just want to feel the hardcore commitment. I feel like what we hear often now is, yeah, it's competitive. We're in the conversation. We're in the game. Like, I want you to lead the game. You're in the Silicon freaking Valley. Like, Stanford could be leading the charge in NIL, in revenue share, and all of the things with academic excellence and athletic excellence, the location of the campus, all the things that you can provide in NIL and like legit name, image, and likeness in the community that you're in. Like, I want to feel that from Stanford. That's what I want to feel. I'm on the table for Carter Henderson. I'm sure there's many other capable candidates that are phenomenal. Can't wait to hear some of those names. When they do hire someone, we will do our best to effort to bring them on.
Yeah, I think the craziest stat for me about the Stanford team. So last year, and just how far they've gone from where they were. They had 11 rushing touchdowns last year, all of them from the quarterbacks. Not a single one from a running back. Now, both of those quarterbacks, Ashton Daniels and Justin Lamson, both went in the portal. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, they had Elijah Brown, who showed some promise last year when he was healthy. So I think on that level, like they have a guy. So like whereas you might say, oh my God, both of the quarterbacks who played the most last year are both gone. That's not always necessarily a bad thing. Now, Ilike Eominer, the wide receiver who like really burst out, like he's at the NFL Combine this week, so they're going to have to replace him. But Emmett Mosley was a guy that, like, especially in that Louisville game last year, really shined. So like they have some pieces, but is what getting is what they need to get back to the old school Stanford, the Stanford that we saw under Jim Harbaugh and the majority of David Shaw's tenure there, or is it a whole new breed of?
I think it's a combination, dude. I think it's a combination because that era wanted to come back. I've been around a lot of those players when I'm ever on campus, and they got such pride. I mean, there's a reason Andrew Luck took the job to be the GM, right? Like they've got a pride and a belief, and I think that it can happen here. I think Troy Taylor's plan when he got the job is the right one of, okay, it's going to be rough our first 2 years, but once we get guys that are in their second and third year here, they're not going to want to leave. And you create an environment there where guys are like, yeah, this degree is insane. Let me, at minimum, stay 3. I'll give you an example. I'm talking to one of the biggest recruits in the country. I don't want to say the position because it'll give it away. And he is, from what I have gleaned, he would love to go to Stanford. He'd love to go to Stanford. He'd also love to play at Alabama. But he knows right now, he's probably not ready. So I think there's a world in Stanford recruiting. Like, you go get the 3-4-star player who values academics, who's a heck of a player. You play him early. You develop the daylights at him. You know you're getting these guys for 3 years. Like, you're kind of like Ohio State, up until this past year, it was 3 and out forever because they were so talented. They went to the NFL. Stanford, to me, it's like 3 and out. If you want to leave, we'll prepare you for that. But that is the model. And that was the vision that Troy Taylor had when he showed up. And I agree with it. Now, like, are you competitive in the landscape of recruiting? And that, to me, is where I want to feel their energy. I don't know that in the NIL game. I know they're in it. Are they going to spend $4 million on a quarterback? Do they think they need to? Because they can get a kid like you referenced, coming out of Southern California, Elijah Brown, out of Mater Dei, who's a premier high school, to go up there because he values academics. He values being in the home state. And I'm sure he's getting some sort of NIL deal. Like, there's a world where that exists too. But either way, like, I think I want to feel Stanford as a more attractive place. Big picture. Like, that's what I want. I want the marketing of that place. I want to feel that place again. Because when you turn it on, and I've called a lot of games there, as you know, when you go to those 3-9 seasons, that's not college football. Like, that's not what it should be at Stanford in terms of the people in that stadium. I think this year was a big jump from year one with Troy Taylor. Like, they went to Syracuse. They got a huge road win. Like, they were competitive in the majority of their games. Big expectations, I think, coming into year 3 for them. But ultimately, for the next AD, I think they got to make a real decision. And what I would recommend is go for it. Like, why not? It's not like you don't have the resources. Go for it and make the country feel it versus academic, athletic excellence. Like, no. You can do everything because it's true. You can do it all there. Christian McCaffrey did it all there. Bryce Love did it all there. Andrew Luck did it all there. Kevin Hogan did it all there. Like, you can do it all there. You can do it all there. I still believe in that place. I wish them the best. And this was fun, Jim. We got to go for it a little bit. So let us know your thoughts in the comments, and to all of our new listeners and subscribers, especially all of you in the South. Stick around, not just for this episode, but go to some past episodes, go to some future episodes. We'll show you some love. Remember, it's college football through the lens of the West Coast. So let's get to our conversation from the Northwest to the South. That's where Kalen DeBoer traveled a little over a year ago. He just completed, of course, his first year. He's about to get deep into his second spring there as the head coach at Alabama. It was a great honor to go there, be invited there, spend time with him, spend time with the staff. I love spending time with the players, and then bringing this conversation to you. So here we go, our conversation presented by our founding partner, 76, keeping you in the know on the go. And on my way there and on my way back, I was going, man. I was rolling, but it was an absolute blast. Kalen DeBoer, thank you for your time. And for all of you watching, hope you enjoy our conversation with the head coach of Alabama. Coach, thanks for taking time. This place is gorgeous. Thank you for showing me around and being here, being around your team. I mean, watching you from afar for the last year has been a joy, because the last time I saw you was after the national championship game at UW. And then life seems like it's been an absolute whirlwind, I'd imagine, to a degree for you being here. I'm curious, as you reflect back on your last year, what it might have been like to be you.
Yeah, first of all, it's great to have you here, and thanks for sharing with the team. Just anytime you can have media training, someone like yourself who's an expert in it, been doing it for many years, a high level in all the different platforms. I know our guys took a lot from today, so thanks for doing that. And life's been moving fast over the last year, but it's really good to have a season behind us, and I think there's really a strong foundation that's in place for us to continue to move forward. There's continuity with the coaching staff, continuity with our players. A lot of guys deciding to forego maybe the NFL. We had very few seniors, and so a lot of good momentum happening within the building, and the work's being done because they know that that's where it all starts. Just really proud of our guys.
Yeah, I tell you what, speaking in front of the group, I've done this a bunch, everybody was leaning forward. And you'd like to think, like, it's because the content was so good, but it was really because that's the kids that you have, the young men that are in the program. I just met with a handful of them. They're so impressive. I think there's a world in college athletics now with it changing so much in football that it's like, it's just transient. It's all transactional. Mm-hmm. These guys are into it. Mm-hmm. Can you shed some light on the culture and the program and the players that you just referenced?
Yeah, we talk about championship meeting habits, and that's part of what their demeanor, body language looks like. But I think when you really like what you're talking about with our guys, they're very focused. They have high-end goals individually for us as a program, and they understand the process and the things that are important for them to reach those goals. And so taking, opportunities like this to learn in any way, and everyone thinks, football, X's and O's, but there's a lot more to it. And, this was another thing just to help them be well-rounded.
Ryan Williams is a standout, obviously. He burst onto the scene in recruiting or 17 playing on huge stages. He's impressed me tremendously with his content. Where have you watched him grow off the field, and what can you say about the type of young man that he is as he walks through this facility?
Yeah, well, he's going to give you everything he has on the football field, in the weight room. He just loves ball, and everything he does, the effort he puts forth, supports the love he has, and you can see it. I think for him, because he's a polarizing type guy, people really are drawn to him. He's got an awesome personality. The humility he has, I think, is something that people probably get a feel for, but it's real, and that's where he just becomes a really great teammate. And the guys on our team and all the attention he gets, they are part of it. They embrace it with him. And what I think he's really continuing to grow is how to manage it all. Yeah. The football is the part that he's, he loves. But I think everything that comes with it, managing it, there's a maturity that he continues to have. He had it well above or well beyond his years already coming in, but he just continued to handle it all and everything that comes your way, whether it's wanted or not. Yeah. He's really doing a good job of managing all of that.
I can remember, and it was fun when you introduced me to the team, you referenced my college roommate, which was Larry Fitzgerald. And I love telling this story. It was freshman year. We had to wear suits to games, but you could wear warm-ups after the game. And the game ends, and I was dubbed his big brother because I was a little older. And he put on his suit. And I go, hey, Fitz, you don't have to put your suit on. You can just put the warm-ups on. And he goes, no. I'm going to wear a suit. People are going to know who I am and what I'm about from the beginning. And he's probably going to go down as one of the more professionalized, people just see a pro when they think and hear that name, Larry Fitzgerald. I felt the same, maybe not exactly the carbon copy, but he's got this vision for his own life that does not say, I'm 18 years old and I just played as a true freshman at 17.
Yeah, he doesn't. And I think, that's what's nice about having a lot of the guys that I think you're seeing in the program, that he can also view, learn from, and it goes the other way too, where they can see, you don't have to be 20, 22 years old to be that level of maturity that he's at. And so that's what I try to facilitate, an environment where everyone can learn from each other. And Ryan, again, paves his own path, but he's also taken in everything he sees from the guys that were here last year and the guys that he's teammates with right now.
The thing that I've always admired about you most is your humility. You go back to the success you had as an athlete or a young coach to Washington to now here. That seems to be reflected everywhere I've been throughout this facility. I'm curious for you, when you walk in a year ago and there's 3,000 screaming fans waiting for you at the airport, how you've been able to navigate what is clearly a dramatically passionate community around this team and still have humility as one of your lead attributes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to have people that care so much about this program, and that's obviously a lot. We're talking about our team, our coaching staff, but as you talk about the fan base and just everyone who's poured into this place, comes and supports us, not just on Saturdays, but all year round, just follows the program. There's a lot that's happened in this program before I got here that I get to reap the rewards of, and just want to continue to build on it and continue to make it better for those that follow.
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely on your way to doing that. When you look at the state of college football right now, like it's a different sport than I played. I'd say it could be different than 5 years ago. You sit in, one of the biggest chairs in the game. Like, how do you view the game and how it has adjusted with all the things off the field, even with the reconstruction of rosters seemingly, every 6 months now?
Yeah, it probably hasn't changed any faster than it is right now. The last year or two have been different than any other years that I've been a part of it. And, the X's and O's is one thing, building a team. I think there's still so many values that are really important to be an elite, being great teams. You can look to the pro model and still find those teams that are special. They have some of those same values that really are foundational, going back decades. And we want to have a great environment. We need to have a toughness about us. It starts with accountability personally and, with each other. So that's where it starts in our program. But college football certainly has changed, and we got to continue to adapt. We got to evolve and make sure we keep the things that are the main thing, but also embrace the changes that come with it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool what you said. Our good friend Chris Peterson would always say it too, of like winning, like there's certain things that just are always going to lead to success. Accountability, toughness. Like, how do you make sure that those are the primary things that matter most within the program, and how have you done it here?
Yeah, I think the messaging is one thing, but then your culture is really what's really happening. And I'm super proud of our guys, whether it's in the classroom, 3.24 GPA this last fall, 95 guys out of 130 with a 3.0, just the highest ever in the history of the football program. And what they're doing off the field, whether it's community involvement, doing a great job of being leaders, socially. Their growth is happening personally, and sooner or later that's going to continue to evolve to the football field and the success that you want to have there. And we're continuing to bring in the right guys, putting them together. They're working extremely hard, and I can't wait to go through this process, go through this journey here this season, and get to the fall.
Yeah, okay, so before we get to the fall, you get to spring here in a matter of weeks. Ryan Grubb and you are reunited. What's it been like to bring back somebody you've known for so long back into the fold?
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't spent much time with him. We've been so busy. He's trying to dive into getting the offense and the staff and getting to know the players. I'm busy doing things too with the team and a lot of engagements and meetings and so forth. But it's really, I think this is year 13 or 14. I've lost track now, but going back to 2007 where our first year was together. And there's been a break or two in between, but it's someone I really trust. And, we see the game similarly. We've talked through, because we've been in the staff room together for so many years. We've talked through the things that we value, what it takes to win, what it takes to be a great offense, how that all meshes and comes together. And, I think, he's going to put his stamp on it. I think the coaching staff this last year, led by Nick Sheridan as the OC, did a great job really in the transition. It's hard being a first-year, team, first-year coordinator, staff coming together, putting it all in place and learning your personnel. They did a good job setting the stage, and I know Ryan's going to do an amazing job here, taking it and, continuing to move it forward. But, yeah, he's off and running, and we're less than 2 weeks away from spring practice, so it's coming fast.
I love that. Coming fast sometimes is life. Could you have imagined when you left UW to come here that the next UW sporting event you'd be at would be your daughter playing softball against Alabama, and she would hit a dinger in that softball game?
Yeah. again, blessings or curse. I'm not sure which that one was. I think someone having the schedule was having a little fun with me at the time, but it's really cool. And it was a special moments, and I always look at it that way, especially when it comes to your journey, and it's even more special when it's your kid's journey. And I'm proud of everything she does and the work she has. But yeah, that was a cool moment, and I'm super proud of her because she's worked really hard to get to see and enjoy those times.
Yeah, that was a fun viral video to watch, knowing that you were in the stands as dad, watching your daughter hit one. All right, last one here. As I was driving into campus, I just put in the stadium in my navigation. I was like, I got to see what this thing is like. And coming in at night, there's a mystique to here. You drove me around campus. There's this beautiful aura around Tuscaloosa. The buildings are magical. Like, it's got this thing to it. I think we all imagine what it might be like to run out of that tunnel and be the head coach of one of the greatest brands in the history of college football. But only you get to do it. Mm-hmm. So what has it been like for you to lead this storied program in that stadium right down the street?
Yeah, it's special, and all those things make it special. The people, though, are what really have got to this point because they care so much. It's just really good people here, great players, and have done it the right way. Great coaches that have guided and led those players. And you're right. I mean, the buildings are beautiful. The campus is beautiful. Everyone's just so proud. And so what happens is you take care of what you're proud of. And the things you see are one thing, but it's the other part that's really important. It's what you feel. And the people here, really make you understand and feel how great it is to be part of the Crimson Tide and running out on that field, as you said. Those are special times, being in the moment in the games that are being played. Those are just, things I know that someday you'll look back on it years from now and really, look at it in a special way. Right now, we're just in the fire trying to make sure we be the best we can be and win some football games.
Yeah, I know it, man. I keep having these flashbacks. Jake Haener, I remember the first time I met you was a Fresno State game, then UW, and now here. And you're right, at every place, the people have been phenomenal. Courtney, your staff, your family. So thank you for the time, Coach. And thanks for welcoming me here to the Script A for the first time. It was awesome.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for everything you helped us with today. And for me personally, you're a special person for me, not just professionally, but just individually. So thanks for being here.
Back at you, man. Yeah. All right, Coach. Thanks,
all right,
man.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. There we go.
It's the Afterglow. Yogi Roth, Jim Thornby. That was Kalen DeBoer, head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, live and in person in that facility. Jim, your takeaways from the conversation presented by our founding partner, 76.
No surprise, but it seems like, the move to the SEC has not changed Kalen DeBoer one bit. He seems to be the same person he always been, and I think that comes back to his roots from coaching in small college football. Like he's had to do it all, so he's seen it all, and I think that humility is what really kind of pushes him, and I think kind of sets him apart from a lot of head coaches around the country.
Yeah, he's got a gravitas that you can just feel. I felt it the first time I flew up to Seattle for spring practice when I got to meet him, and felt it again when I was there last week, spending time within his facility. One thing I didn't mention in the open, one of the bigger takeaways that I had that might surprise some people out there is when I walked into his office, I expected like the Saban desk and the Saban chair that you always saw for years. Upgraded, baby. I mean, it's a different look. It's a different look. And I asked about it, and I was told that all of the furniture that Nick Saban had in his office as the head coach at Alabama for so long is now in his current office in the stadium. So it wasn't as though Coach DeBoer was like, hey, we got to change it up. It was like, no, he wanted his stuff. So he went to his office with those two chairs. I can remember, like, he'd have his legs crossed. It'd be him and Kobe or him and somebody. All too often we'd see it on ESPN. And now Kalen DeBoer's got a different look to it, a different flair to it. But I think Alabama, overall, I think you're in a great spot. I can't wait to watch in spring. They will have their A-Day, as you referenced. And I think Bama fans, you should be really proud for who you have. You've got a guy that I think will reflect every ideology you desire. Is it harder to win national championships now than it was under Nick Saban? That's a truth. That's 100% a truth, whether you want to accept it or not. When you look at the playoff and how challenging it is to go through it and win 3 or 4 games, who knows if it expands again. It won't be easy, especially in the conference that we all have grown to enjoy and appreciate in the SEC with Kalen DeBoer leading the way. But I think you're in a great position to go do that. Some questions to be answered this spring. We'll circle up at the end of spring and give a little recap from Alabama. And I got a feeling, Jim, before the season, we might have a premier player from the Crimson Tide back on this show. So with that said, lots of love. Go to yoption.com for all of the content. Make sure you give us a follow on social media. Always bringing you college football through the lens of the West Coast. And it's about 72 today and sunny, so I'm ahead of the beach. Peace!